Anyway, so let's move on to further news. And what I'd like to play you is from RT's News, a Russian channel here, the Keisler report about the U.S. dollar. Take a listen to this report right here.
He said that the U.S. investigation into BNP Paribas, which they might fine them $10 billion, may encourage companies to stop using dollars in international transactions. He said, quote, "We could say that companies would have maximum interest to do the most possible transactions in other currencies." Neuer, who is also a member of the European Central Bank's Governing Council, said yesterday on BFM television, "Trade between China and Europe, do it in euros, do it in renminbi, stop doing it in dollars. This is an affair that will leave marks."
Yeah, that's right. The countries around the world are getting out of the U.S. dollar, and we're seeing more. Well, the petro ruble is here. You know, you got the big Russia and China gas deal, which is going to be done in something other than dollars. Now, that's my understanding, that the U.S. gets to write checks with their mouth that their bank account never has to cash. The rest of the world is saying, "Man, we don't want this extraordinary privilege."
Well, actually, that's an interesting time to look back to, because that was in 1969 that Charles de Gaulle's finance minister said that. And right then is the first time, the most recent time that the U.S. went bankrupt. Remember, they went off the gold standard because they couldn't meet their obligations overseas. Well, the Brits took it. They just accepted the bankruptcy and the notion that America would never give them back their gold. But the French sent a warship over to collect their gold. Here, the same thing cut to, 40 years later, and America's bankrupt again, even on just a pure paper scheme. How do you go bankrupt with just fictional money?
Europe depends heavily on natural gas supplies from Russia, which are piped into the region via Ukraine. This is especially true in the winter when gas is needed for heat. In addition to cutting off natural gas supplies to Europe, Russia has also just pulled itself out of the petrodollar. That was reported on Zero Hedge. The story quotes Bloomberg.com stating that Russia may unseal its $88 billion reserve fund and convert some of its foreign currency holdings into ruble. Ruble. This is further explained by Mark Slavo at shtfcplan.com, who explains what we are seeing are the strategic moves that will eventually catalyze the next great war, and make no mistake, this is exactly what's in store for the world should these escalations continue. It goes on to say, he goes on to write, Mike Adams writes, an escalation into war. What's happening here is a radical escalation of the global currency war in which Russia and China are attempting to rout the U.S. dollar and ultimately destroy the U.S. empire. Very much like the U.S. right now with their sanctions, and the European Union are trying to collapse the Russian ruble. In fact, what's interesting, they're trying to collapse it ahead of the dollar falling. So it's a very interesting war, and you can't help how much the Vatican hand is behind this, because the Vatican wants to control a one-world currency and a one-world monetary system. But clearly, in a biblical prophecy, he gets nervous about things, tidings from the north and from the east. What are the tidings from the east? China has been buying up the gold of the world, making sure that their currency is backed by gold, not just empty air, as Mike Adams brings out in his own article.